start with a Fox News alert at this hour. Secretary of State John Kerry on his way to Geneva, reaching out to his Russian counterpart to test the seriousness of Moscow's proposal to Syria to hand over its chemical weapons. This as Russian President Vladimir Putin chides the U.S. in an op-ed piece published in the New York Times.
Doug Luzader's live for us in Washington with the very latest on this developing story. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning. And despite hopes for a diplomatic resolution in Syria, we're already seeing signs this morning of how difficult it's going to be to reach an agreement. As you just mentioned, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry just arrived in Switzerland after taking the red eye there to meet with his Russian counterpart. The United Nations Security Council is going to continue to work to reach an agreement to try to hold Syria accountable. And the Washington Post reports this morning that the CIA has finally started to provide arms to rebel groups in Syria. All developments, and the White House seemed to be celebrating victory.
Complete about-face by the Syrian regime, an acknowledgement for the first time in its existence that they hold chemical weapons.
But a diplomatic solution may all hinge on Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is already creating new problems for the White House this morning, declaring in a New York Times op-ed that even if diplomacy fails, the U.S. cannot decide on its own to use force in Syria without UN approval. Anything else, he writes in the New York Charter, and would constitute an act of aggression.
And let's keep in mind who has blocked us every time we have sought a resolution in the United Nations. It's been the Russians and the Chinese. So I think it's very hypocritical of him to say that.
And this may all bolster claims from critics that Russia will intentionally try to throw sand in the gears of this process, and that this is all about buying time for the regime of Bashar al-Assad. Heather and Patty Ann.
All right. Doug Luzader live for us this morning. Thank you.